my fellow Kenobians. Welcome to the Kenobi Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris Kenobi. Now, today I want to come to you with a very serious topic, and I hope that you will stay with me until the end. Not only that, I would like to hope that you would think about what I'm going to tell you and like and subscribe. And pass this along. Today, Kenobi and I come to you somewhat depressed, somewhat downhearted, somewhat hopeless, and a feeling of hopelessness or a shroud of something dark, something more elusive that's taking away or sapping my reserve of joy and peace. You know, when bad things happen and life doesn't seem to go the way we want, we all have a reserve. I call it the God point, the God space. I call it the God particle that will click on in our deepest and darkest moments in our lives and in our circumstances. And that fail-safe switch will turn on, bringing us hope and joy and enabling us to see that there is still hope for mankind. There's still hope for us. There's still hope that our circumstances can change, whatever they are. And there is a trust that even if we fail to see that light, if we fail to see the caring and compassion in the land of the living, we still believe that somehow the world or the force will right itself to that. Now, something sapping today my reserves. I woke up feeling quite down. I didn't know why. I didn't understand it. And then some things happened that came to really God brought to me, so that I can see this is what's happening today. And so today I want to come and I want to talk to you about America. I am an American. You are probably, if you're listening to me, you're an American. If you're not, that's okay too. Maybe this will be something you can look at for your own country. I want to say this to you right now. I love America. I love America. I love what it stands for. I love the principles it was founded on, even though some of the founding fathers wrote those principles but didn't fully live out those principles. And I love America because in spite of my background, in spite of my history as growing up black in America, growing up through the civil rights movement and all of those things, and a disparity of race in America, in spite of all of that, I can say to you with surety that I love America. And I can say to you this, that there is no better place in the world. We are the jewel of the world. We are the lighthouse. We are the light on the hill. That's why people are drawn to our country. That's why people are drawn to America. No other country will give you the opportunities, even if they're disparaged. No other country would give you the chance, the opportunity to be better than America. And that being said, when I look at the life of Obi-Wan Kenobi, he comes from a fractured republic. A republic that in its heyday was the jewel of the galaxy. The jewel of the galaxy, where there were 10,000 Jedis across the galaxy, spreading light, love, and compassion, and keeping the peace. The republic itself was a republic of non-violence, going 10,000 years without darkness from the Sith, or the enemies of the Jedi. But Kenobi comes from a destroyed republic. Kenobi comes from a republic that was taken over by the Galactic Empire. Now, if you ask Obi-Wan Kenobi, and many people think that he will say something different, when you say and you ask Obi-Wan Kenobi, when did your republic fall? A lot of us that know Star Wars will probably say it fell with the Clone Wars. A lot of us that know Star Wars will say, no. It fell at Operation Nightfall when Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, when he sacked the temple, killed the younglings, and the galaxy fell. A lot of people will say that that was the rise of Emperor Palpatine, the evil Dark Lord of the Sith. But believe it or not, Obi-Wan will tell you those were not the moment that the republic started to decline and fall. As a matter of fact, those things were the result of the decline and fall of his republic. And so I look at that right now and I ask myself, as I'm losing faith and I'm losing hope in the goodness of God in the land of the living, if I go 10 years from now or 20 years from now, if I'm fortunate enough to be alive, but if I'm not, when history looks back at America, 20 years from now, looking back into our history, what will historians say will be the moment that America lost its way? Not the result of America losing its way, but the moment that America lost its way. Because that's more important. You see, if we could go back to see when America started to decline, when America started to lose its way, one would hope that history could right that wrong and bring America back to where it needs to be. But we have to understand that moment. We have to be able to look at America and see that this is when it started to change. This is when things went wrong. And so today I want to talk about America, and I want to talk about something that's happened. But I want to start out today by giving you some signs going through Obi-Wan's life and the history of the Republic, the Galactic Republic, of what happened. And not only in the Galactic Republic, when I look at history of the world and I look at some of the most powerful nations in the world, and you ask yourself, what happened to Greece? What happened to Rome? What happened to Babylon? What happened to all of these powerful nations? There are some commonalities that I would like to discuss, and hopefully that would open up your mind to maybe see where America is losing its way. Not totally lost its way, but if we don't right the ship, the results are catastrophic. The loss of the republic, the decline of the empires. And so I want to bring that to you today, and let's start going over some of the things that Kenobi and I wrote down here. Here is what we call signs of decline. Okay, so it says history has revealed several warning signs that often precede the decline of nations. Okay, that often precede the decline of nations. These signs can be observed across various civilizations and empires and galaxies, and indicating vulnerabilities that led to eventual collapse. Okay, so when we look at the great empires of the world, and we look at what happened to them, Egypt, we're talking about Babylon, we're talking about Media Persia, we're talking about Rome, we're talking about Greece, the rise of America. We're talking about Europe, Germany, all of these things. When you look at all of these commonalities, and we're talking about the Galactic Republic of Obi-Wan Kenobi, here are some warning signs of decline. The first warning sign is economic instability. Nations often face financial crisis, leading to inflation, unemployment, and social unrest. Now, when I look at America, and when you look at America, and I hope you're looking at this objectively, are you concerned that economic instability is causing America to lose its way? The disparity of wealth in America. Do you understand that, no matter who you support, most Americans are barely making it. Most Americans barely keep their head financially above water. Black, white, red, green, it doesn't matter. The bulk of us, the bulk of the 350 million of us are barely getting by. So do you see the economic instability? Do you see the price of groceries, the price of gas, the price of clothes, the price of an education for our children, The price of an automobile, the price of automobile repairs and the like, the price of owning a home and a mortgage. Do you see that this economic instability and this disparity of wealth is causing America, is one of the signs of America's decline? The second one is political corruption. And Obi-Wan faced this clearly because inside his republic was the senator from Naboo. His name was Sheev Palpatine, but behind the scenes, while everyone believed that this man was the right man for the job at the right time of the Galactic Republic's needs, he was the one behind the scenes that was causing the decline of the entire republic. As the Republic fell, he rose and changed into Emperor Palpatine and revealed himself as the Lord of the Sith. A decline in political integrity and increased corruption can erode public trust and governance. Well, would you say in America that that's something that has really come to the forefront lately? The political corruption. Who can we trust? No, really, when we think about our politicians from our own individual states and communities, and even our local communities and local government, who can we really trust? They knock on your door, or they'll come through a commercial and they'll tell you a little bit about their background and how they were raised and how they care and how they want to change the quality of life for all of us. But somehow when they get into office and we buy into it and we send them there with the hopes and dreams of all of their constituents, somehow they change. They let us down. They start to look out for their own interests. They start to look out and fear of how they're going to keep their job. And they don't believe that keeping their job is to look out for their constituents. They believe that somehow keeping their job is to look out for special interest. We can't trust them. We can't believe in them. They're corrupt. They take bribes. They manipulate the market for their own selfish gain and financial gain. They make laws that will only benefit them and their wealthy friends, that disparage of wealth. They don't make laws that show that they care for the people. They are all corrupt, the bulk of them. And I'm not talking about just Republicans. You know, to be honest, when I look at what the Republican Party said that they used to stand for, I ask you, if you're a Republican, what Republican do you trust? What Republican do you put your hopes in? What Republican do you feel it's not trying to take advantage of government for themselves, not trying to look down the road at themselves, not selling themselves out to special interest groups? What Republican really stands on smaller government, right? Religion, right? Okay, wealth and all of those things that the Republican Party stood for. Who can you trust? They all are corrupt. The bulk of the Republican Party is corrupt. And that speaks to the Democratic Party. What Democrat can you trust? When you look at the Democratic Party, you have people that are there for 50, 60 years and somehow have become anesthetized to the caring of the little person. And the only time they care about us is when they feel like there's some new person rising up that can untake their seat. But you can't trust the Democrats no more than you can trust the Republicans. The Democrats run on affordability and care and health care and all the things that, yes, we care about and we need as individual Americans. But those things rarely ever get to us. They'll blame it on the other party. They'll blame it on somebody else. But the reality of it is most of the Democratic Party are corrupt. They're taking funds from special interest groups as well. And these special interest groups don't want us to have better health care, don't want us to have a better quality of life because it affects their bottom line. So who can you trust? The politics in America, our political leaders, and I'm talking about our local mayors and our councilmen too, as outsiders come into our town and develop it and rip apart the trees. They have also sold into the corruption. They have bought into it. They become part of it. And so when you start to look at the political corruption, when you cannot trust your political leaders, as it was in the Galactic Republic, as it is now, and as it is in some of these empires, when you cannot trust your political leaders to do what's right for you, when you release them and send them out to do what's right for you, what happens to that is that the individual citizen loses hope, don't want to vote, don't want to get out and vote, doesn't believe that their vote matters, and start to really live in a whatever happens, happens mentality, and never get out of the mindset that there can be something better. We on the lower tier of Americans start to just accept this is just how it is for us. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and our children won't have decent educations because we can't afford, and if they can, they go into debt and they start out in debt. And you can work and live 30 years to finally own a home, but at the point where you feel like you're so close you can't afford your mortgage. Retirement means nothing. Social Security will be gone in another 6 years. All of this is because of corruption. It's not because of mismanagement. It's not because of waste, fraud, and abuse. That's corruption in itself. It's part of the corrupt system. It's part of our political leaders and those in our communities selling out to those that are more rich, more powerful, and just want more. And so they encroach on the lives and the well-being of the little person like me, like you. So when you see political corruption, can you see and say to yourself, this could be a sign of America losing its way? And then there's another thing Kenobi now found. It says a corrupt justice system. The guardrails of any civilization is its view, form, and execution of fair justice for all. When justice bends to the rule of people, to rule people and pressure rather than the rule of law and its governing constitution, it will surely fall. Now that's one thing we used to be able to, and let's be clear. Our American justice system isn't perfect, but it is the best justice system in the whole wide world. Let's be clear about that. And so there used to be a point in our time when we had to fight for justice. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. These were things that we had to fight for justice, but finally justice bent back and accepted and was inclusive of everybody in being entitled to fair justice, because that was one of the constitutional foundations of our nation. But now we see that we're coming back into time, we're curving back, where justice really isn't about the rule of law anymore. Justice is really about how much money you have to afford expensive attorneys. If I committed a crime and Elon Musk committed the same crime, I'm going to jail and he's not even going to get a slap on his hand. Why? Because of the power base and the economic base and the ability of wealth that he has to afford legal representation that should be available to me as my right, even if I can't afford it, as my Miranda right. But I'm going to get some guy that just tells me to cop a plea, even though in my heart and mind I'm innocent. The justice system is failing. The justice system isn't looking out for the fairness of all anymore. The justice system is bending to the rule of people and politicians and those who are in power, and it's bending. Justice itself is bending and not being objective anymore, but rather siding with the views of those that put justice in office. See, the justices have forgotten that they represent justice, not a man or political party. So when they get into office now, their points of view is not the point of view for justice. They are not speaking out for justice anymore. They're speaking out for the person that puts the justices in their seats. And I think you can agree to that. And I think it's always, and when we go back and we even look at, how presidents appoint judges and justices, we can always see this has always turned, the pendulum have always turned to which political party had the more justices or which political party had the more judges instated in our justice system. And that will change the viewpoint of America. And on both sides and on all sides, it's wrong because their job is to speak for Lady Justice and Lady Liberty, but they have not. And so when we look back and we can see as Americans, truly, that our justice system is failing us, that our justice system is unfair, that our justice system itself is one-sided now, more towards the rich than anyone else, that someone that is just a normal everyday American doesn't really have a voice that justice will speak for anymore. And that's the person that justice was created to speak for you and I as Americans, the little people, if you will. So when we look back, and I hope that you can look back and look now at America and see our justice system declining and see the faith that people are losing in our justice system. This could be a point where America loses its way. And when we look at the justice system, don't you find it ironic that the jails are full of people that profited and was imprisoned just because of marijuana, right? But now, justice says that it's okay to produce it, okay to sell it, okay to make millions from it, but those individuals that were arrested doing it will stay in jail. Now, there must be some irony in that. There must be irony that things that in history people went to jail for, now those that are rich and powerful has made it their business to use what they did now to legalize it, bending justice to their will, to make it legal so that they, with their assets and abilities to make money and gain wealth, are gaining more wealth from the very things that justice said were illegal. That doesn't just go to our compromised justice system. It goes to our compromised immigration system. That's part of the justice system. So that's something else. So here's another one. Social discontent. Widespread dissatisfaction among the populace, often due to inequality or lack of resources, which can lead to revolts and instability. Social discontent. What would you call social discontent? Do you see a social discontent in America? Just look how polarized we are. Look how divided we are as a country. Look at where America is today and where America was maybe 15 years ago. We weren't as polarized. We weren't as divisive. And here's the problem with it. See, social discontent only becomes a problem when somebody takes their point of view too far. When someone takes their point of view and forget that we're all American and we have these inalienable rights to believe what we want to believe as long as it's not hurting anybody. But when someone takes their social viewpoints and then forces it and imposes it on the justice system to bend justice to the will of the minority, whoever is holding that minority discontent. When you look at how polarized we are, the phrase "Make America Great Again" isn't a bad phrase. But when we all have social discontent in terms of what that really means for each one of us, right? But right now there is a populace, okay, that is trying to enforce their majority's social populace and beliefs on what Make America Great Again really is for them. Irrespective that that point of view and that time period, or whatever it is, those justice systems that were in place when America was great for them may not be great for the rest of us. And that's causing this social clashing that we have. This is causing clashes about race and clashes about immigration, clashes about healthcare, clashes about the rights to vote. All of these things now is causing this discontent. And what's going to happen, and when you see it in other nations, when people feel like they're losing their rights to be individuals, to have those inalienable rights, to be able to believe what you want to believe, and say it's okay that I can respect your point of view and you can respect my point of view without there being any type of clashing or attacks or retribution. Well, one of the parties is going to either fight back ferociously and cause a decline in the country, or just be silent and allow that majority to run them over until the nation itself will just implode on those majoristic beliefs. See, if everybody was quiet right now, and everybody said, to the populace that's saying, we want to make America great again, whatever that time period was in American history for you, if everybody would just be silent and let MAGA win, if you will, okay? Let MAGA get everything in their wish list that they believe that will make America great again. Sooner or later, the nation itself will implode, because history has shown us that whatever time period that was, there was a rising up, there was a revolt, there was a division in our country that nearly destroyed the nations and have destroyed other nations all across the globe. So you have to see that this is where we're going. And let's take a look at where this discontent led us. It led us to an insurrection on January 6th. One can't deny that. It has led us to fighting one another, stoning one another, calling each other horrible, heinous names, damning one another, judging one another, believing that one has a moral high ground over another just because of someone's race or ethnic background, sexual preference, or whatever it is. Somehow now we are squeezing out those people because of the majority. But believe it or not, it's not going to give you what you want. The nations and history has shown us that kind of overspreading discontent will destroy an empire, will destroy a republic, will destroy a nation. And then there's civil discontent, widespread disparity between citizens based on race, religious affiliation, and economic status. Clearly, we can see that this is what's happened, not just happened in Obi-Wan's republic, but it's happened all over the world. The fall of the Soviet Union, we can talk about that. We can talk about Germany. We can talk about that. We can talk about Babylon. We can talk about that. We can talk about Greece. We can talk about that. We can talk about Media Persia. We can talk about that. We can talk about the fall and rise of Iraq. We can talk about that. We can talk about Syria. We can talk about that. All because people had gotten tired of being denied. People have gotten tired of eating the scraps, eating the crumbs from under the table, if you will, from those in power, for those in political might, for those that were rich and wealthy. People just got fed up with it and got tired of it, and they revolted against those things. When we live in a country right now that says that as Americans we are all equal, but the majority starts to bend justice to the will of the majority at the least, where those that are in the minority because of their race, sexual preference, economic status, are being affected, are being destroyed, are being diminished. Sooner or later, somebody's going to say enough. Someone's going to say that this is not right, and this is where you have groups and you have this protest of what you call it, No King's Day. Why? You have people of all different races, political backgrounds, religions, sexual preferences, all coming together to say to the justice system, to say to the political corruption, we have had enough. But when that is ignored, it stops being a peaceful protest. It stops being a rally and it turns into a riot. And that is a decline. And history will say that when we look back, some 50 years from now, and we look back, what will be the point when they said that civil discontent was when America started to lose its way? When we went back to attacking people because they were black, because they were Mexican, because they were Chinese, because they came from different countries that we considered to be shithole places. When our fear that foreigners were coming into our country to take our jobs away, and that fear led us to having a lack of compassion and a lack of empathy for people that are taking the jobs that we, even as Americans, as middle-class Americans, don't even want. But we've been somehow brainwashed to believe that they were the enemy. This is a time when one would say America could have been losing its way. And this is, again, these are commonalities for all nations that have risen and fallen in our world. And of course, Obi-Wan's Galactic Empire. Here's another one. Spiritual degradation. The nation's governing spiritual anchor has been ignored, denied, or reimagined. Now, so many people talk about America, and we talk about that America is built on Christian beliefs, right? I mean, we say this so often, and we're proud of it. Our founding fathers were Christians, and they believed in the Holy Bible. They believed in the sacred text. They believed in God. And so there's been this calling back of America to God. One would say that's what we've seen. But when we see that as Americans, and this is where, there is a fine line between having a nation with a spiritual anchor and being a nation that wants their religion to be some type of national edict. Spiritual nationalism. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a nation that was founded on certain religious and spiritual principles. And that's just who we are. But it doesn't negate the free will moral agency of other religions and other people from other different cultures. That's not what our Christian religion does. Our Christian religion says the anchor is, this is who we are, this is what we believe. And you have the free will moral agency to either join in or not. And if you choose not to do it, that's okay too. And justice will work with both cultures to make sure that everybody is being spoken for by the justice system, by Lady Liberty. And we can't get away from the fact that America was built on spiritual principles that, because of the founders, because of their flaws, it was re-imaged into something else. But nevertheless, it doesn't take away that the anchor to America has been Christianity. But Christianity has been re-imaged, reimagined in the form of whatever political party is in charge now. It's not really what the Bible says it is. Because if it was based on the Bible, we wouldn't try to destroy those of other spiritual preferences and religious preferences and sexual preferences. No, we would not try to destroy them. We would not hate them. We would not bash them. We would not condemn them. That's not the Bible. That may be America's reimagined version of Christianity, but surely it is not what most of us believe is the gospel, the full gospel. Okay? And America starts to lose its way When America starts to repackage God and our anchor to whatever it is we want it to be, when America goes and twists the very sacred text of God to dilute it, to mistreat others, to manipulate others using it, when even our political leaders try to sway us and woo us with a watered down version of what the sacred texts are, to the point where most people who believe don't even know what to believe or who to believe anymore because they have put more faith in those that are trying to explain and dilute and manipulate the sacred text than them getting out those sacred texts and going through it themselves. So when you have this type of nation that has lost its spiritual anchor and now is vulnerable to every sound and which way of doctrine that comes along, any version of Christianity that somehow someone can recreate and use for their own selfish gains at the destruction of other individuals, which is not Christianity, a nation can fall. And when those spiritual leaders, when it comes down to the spiritual leaders and those in the local body, the local shepherds refuse to rightly divide the word of God, to rightly portray it, and to call out sin and unrighteousness, but to teach their congregants about fairness and empathy and the compassion and what the gospel stand for and what Christ stood for, and to speak out against those things that are going on right now, the racism, the disparity of wealth, and the uncaring and unsympathetic viewpoint that we have to immigration. Well, what's happening is there is an eroding of even the foundational structure of what America stood for in terms of our Christian beliefs. The silence is deafening from the pulpits. The pulpits are silent. We're not speaking out, but what's happening is they have been squelched. The local church itself has been quieted by the loud voices of those that dare tell us that they have an inside track to what Jesus wants. And we should just follow them like the Pied Piper all the way into hell because this is what Jesus wants. And we are the pillars of Christianity in our culture right now. And we don't even have the discernment to realize that they do not represent our Jesus. They do not represent what our Jesus stands for. They do not represent the sacred text. Heck, even if we believed that and came to that realization, we don't even have the courage to defend the sacred text themselves. And so when you see that spiritual degradation, a nation, sooner or later, an empire, a galactic republic will fall. When people lose trust, when people lost trust in the Jedi, when the Jedi started to turn its way from being religious peacekeepers and started to be armed forces, and they started to take up sides with the government, and when they started to lose its way, well, that's when people started to lose trust in the religious system of Kenobi's Republic. That's what's happening now. There is no line anymore between church and state. Church is state and state is church. And no one's saying anything about that. No one's saying how that goes against the grain of what the gospel stands for. The silence of Christians in America is deafening. But what makes up a Christian? Your view of Christianity could be different from mine now because we've all been giving so many different reimagined idolic versions of what Jesus represented. So who knows what Christianity is anymore? Who knows what Christianity means anymore when Paula White can stand up or evangelists can stand up and tell you $1,000 for 1,000 blessings? Who really knows anymore if we're not digging into the sacred text ourselves? When someone comes along and said, God said this, and we run with it right over the cliff. Because we don't have the discernment, and we don't have, as a nation loses its spiritual anchor. The individual Americans, the individuals in that nation start to lose their personal connection and their personal anchor of spirituality. See, as America has lost its way to the true teachings of the gospel, the true teachings of Jesus Christ, individual Americans that call themselves Christians have lost their personal relationship with Jesus Christ, which would have enabled them to call out the unrighteousness and those that were rightfully manipulating the gospel. But we can't do that now, because as the nation fell, so fell our personal relationships. So fell the relationships of our local shepherds. This is something that starts at the top, but it whittled down to the most trustworthy Christian. Vulnerable Christians that don't know what to believe or who to believe. And so when someone shows up and say, I am the Messiah, he's over there, he's over there. Jesus told me this. I saw Jesus yesterday. People just buy into it. And that is the decline of any empire, any nation. And as in Obi-Wan's case, his republic, when they lost faith in the Jedi. How about this one? Degrading compassion. A nation is built on care. A nation is built on equality. A nation is built on the ability and the rights of you telling me that we're equal and we should be one. A nation is built on the fact that if I'm on the ground, then you're going to offer me a hand and lift me up. A nation doesn't say, I'll kick you when you're down. A nation doesn't say, get out, get out, get out. A nation doesn't say, because you're black, you don't belong here. Because you're Chinese, you don't belong here. Because you're Japanese, you don't belong here. That's not who we are. We're a nation that cares about people. When a nation stops caring about people, a nation ceases to be a nation. When a nation stops caring about homelessness, when a nation stops caring about those who can't afford health care, when a nation stops caring about those who can't pay their rent or afford to pay their bills, when a nation stops caring about the livelihood of those lesser Americans, of those lesser people in their countries, when it's just us that we're looking out for in our house, in our kids, and what's ours. And it doesn't matter what you have. You're not getting what I worked for. You're not getting this. You don't deserve it. You didn't work hard enough for it. Get out, get out, get out. When we stop caring about the elderly, when we stop caring about those that are sick, when we stop caring about our own elderly parents, and when we stop caring about those that are lesser, a nation could lose its way. And I submit to you that I believe that this is something that happened in Obi-Wan's time and happened in a lot of different nations across the world, when the disparity of inequality and finances and corruption came. The rich got richer and they stopped caring about the little man. The only thing the little man was good for was to come and work, earn your little check that you should be thanking me for. And however you spend it and whether you have enough is not my problem. When a nation stops caring about how someone is doing, and that no one should not be without the ability to walk into a hospital and get help, or walk into a pharmacy and get the medication that can save their lives. But because of your wealth and because of your status, you don't deserve these good medications. You don't deserve these medications that just came off the block, that are only available. The pharmaceutical companies will only give them to us, to those that are rich and powerful. And somehow we don't even hear about these medications. When people stop caring about people, when people stop taking food to homeless shelters, and when people stop volunteering to help those in need, a nation stops being a nation, because a nation without compassion is a nation in chaos. And then there's the environmental degradation. The environment changes. And the environment changes because of the corruption and the economic instability and the political corruption and the compromised justice systems. We rip up trees to put more buildings in place, and we don't care how it affects the environment anymore. We don't care how we displaced wildlife anymore. We don't care what's happening to the Amazon anymore. We don't care what's happening in our communities when overdevelopment continues to push others out, and when other people are coming into your community and they're pushing you out because you can't afford this new lifestyle that this community has created to appease those with more money and more status. When we talk about the climate and we talk about climate change as if it's a dream and if it doesn't matter, and it's getting harder to breathe and it's getting more difficult to live, and no one's looking at Mother Earth, and no one cares about the earth itself, but the earth is groaning out for justice to speak for her as well, because justice used to speak for the environment. Justice used to care about the environment. Justice used to care about offshore drilling. Justice used to care about emissions. Justice used to care about the overuse of our resources. Justice used to care about, yes, justice cared about windmills as alternate forms of energy. But when justice stops caring about the earth, that nation and that earth will decline. And someone will look back on history 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now and say, that's the moment. That's why the result of it right now is we have to have masks when we go outside. This is why we can't breathe anymore. This is why there's a rise in asthma and allergies anymore. This is the point when the nation stopped caring about the environment. And the last thing I'll say, and I think it's the most important of any nation's decline, is silence. When people just stop caring. When people have been beat down so much and they fought so hard that they just don't have any more fight in them. When people feel like I've done the best I can, but nobody's listening to me. When people feel like, what good is my vote? They're going to get their way anyway. When people have lost faith in the power of unity to believe and fight for something in a commonality, because the rich have the power and the rich have justice, and we have nothing. When local pastors are silent when they see the religious abuse of those that are in public ministry and they do not call them out. When local spiritual leaders are silent because they refuse to bring revelation and reformation to spiritual doctrines that are way outdated and don't even line up to the gospel. When people feel like they're not being heard anymore and they just go in their house and pull the shades down and stop caring about anything else, they don't understand that sooner or later the injustice, the corruption, the economic instability will still knock on their doors. When it's the silence of us as a group, as we the people, to call out in unity the injustices, the break and the corruption, when we refuse to get out and join other people that feel the same way but somehow need us, because one makes two and two makes four. Somehow when we just say, forget it, I give up, we walk away not just from our lives and our well-being, but we damn the next generation. That's what silence does. Silence damns not just us, but our children and our grandchildren will be victims of our silence. And they will cry out and they will look and say, Grandma, Grandpa, why were you silent? Look at me now. Look what I don't have that you used to have, but you just stayed silent when they were taking it away. These are the things that I believe and signs of Obi-Wan that will lead a nation to ruin. And I'm going to say this to you, and I know that you're going to probably say I'm wrong, but I'm worried about our country. I'm worried about America. I'm worried about where we're heading. All of these things, if you look at the list, and you're objective, you're not looking at this and picking a side, but you're stepping back and you're looking at this and you're saying that there's 2, 3, maybe even 4 or 5 issues here that we as Americans should be concerned about. You should join me in that concern. You should team up with me in that concern. You should say, you know what, Kenobi, you're absolutely right. Where do we go from here, though? What do we do next? What choices do we have? The Bible says 2 are better than 1 because if one falls down, there's another person to help them up. Kenobi and I need someone to help us up. You need someone to help you up. Aren't you tired of being silent alone? Aren't you tired of fighting by yourself for what's right for you, for your children, for your grandchildren and their children? I'm concerned about it. It brought me to a point today where it depressed me. But I refused to not hope. I won't let the instability, the corruption, the injustice, I won't let the civil discord, I won't let the spiritual decline take away the one commodity that I have that's mine: hope. No one can take away your hope. They may try to squash it. They may try to wring it out of you. They may try to beat it out of you with circumstances. They may try to take it away from you by taking away your rights. But hope belongs to us. And as long as we have hope in our lives, in the lives of our children and their children, as long as we have hope in our spiritual anchors, as long as we have hope and what this country used to represent, there's still a chance to turn it back. There's still a chance to reform it to what it used to be. Not perfect, imperfect, but unified in its imperfection and unified in its desire to become to become a better nation, a more perfect union. And I hope that you stuck around for this. I hope it touched you. I hope someone in you is burning up and saying, damn it, America can't lose. We can't lose our way. That you would look at your children tonight and look at your grandchildren and say, I've got to fight for them. I've got to get off of my chair for them. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to stand up for them. I'm going to be the voice of justice. I'm going to be the voice against the corruption. I'm going to be the voice of the economic disparity. I'm going to say something or do something. Because if you don't, if you do not, then you must admit that in spite of your condition right now, you are part of a structure and a mechanism that's destroying you, and you're willingly allowing it to. And I believe you're better than that. I believe America's better than that. I believe that we're all better than that. Time will tell. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe.